Hey guys, so no BS, we're going to get right into the technicals. We're going to cover six tickers today. So starting out, we're going to look at SPY. Now, the one thing I do want to point out right here is this very obvious rising wedge. As you guys can see, we have this pattern right there, this pattern right there. Now, the one thing I do want to note is that we did break out of this rising wedge right here. So let's just go ahead and clean that up. Now, another thing that I want to note is that we did reject this 200-day moving average. So this 200-day moving average is sitting right at 428.67. Now we do also have this 20-day moving average that we could be running into if we continue to see downside. That's right at 414.66. So now we're going to go ahead. We're going to look at the weekly time frame. So that's the 5-year chart. I'm going to go ahead and take off this rising wedge pattern. And let's just take a look at where support is. So if we do continue to fall, I see very clear support being right here, which is right where we saw this huge reversal candle. So we had this massive bullish day, or bullish week, I should say. We had a week where we just had some indecision. So we had that doji candle. And then we had this week where we just seriously sold off, reversed that entire move. So I do believe that this top right around here at 412.68 could be support, because they do say that past resistance could act as future support. So that's the idea right here. Now, if we are catching the bottom of these, and we're catching this bottom as well, we have this bottom right there, that bottom right there, and then we have this resistance right there. So I do believe that this 390.32 area could be our next strong level of support. Now, even below that, I believe this 365.27 area could be a strong area of support, because we have this support right there, and right there, which is where we made our bottoms. So I don't know if that's the bottom of the year, but if we do break below this, we do have this 200-day moving average on the weekly time frame right at 346.47. So now let's go ahead, clean that all up, and we're going to move on to the next ticker. So next we're looking at the Qs. I'm on the 1-year time frame, and one thing I want to point out, or several things I want to point out, is that right now current price action is in a trend channel. So it's actually in a bullish trend channel. As you guys can see, we're just zigzagging between these two trend lines right here. So now we do have this resistance trend line right here, which is actually connecting these tops. Now there's something very important that I do want to pay attention to, and it's this right here. So take a look at where we're at. We're basically at the intersection of these two trend lines. So we're looking at the intersection of this resistance line and the intersection of this support line. So if we do break below this area, which is basically right around 322.86, then I do believe things could start getting a little bit hairy. Now we also have the 20-day moving average right at 319.48. So what's Monday's price action going to look like? If it's a strong gap down that literally just gaps down both of these supports, then yeah, I do think that we could see some further selling, because that is a pretty critical support, I would say. Now, interestingly enough, we didn't hit the 200-day moving average like we did with the SPY, and we do have this 50-day moving average right here at 347. So now I'm going to clean all of this up, and we're going to take a look at the weekly time frame, which is the 5-year. So I'm going to go ahead, remove this trend channel. Now here is where I see all of the important supports and resistances. So let me actually just zoom out a little bit more here. All right. So first and foremost, we see resistance right here. Now look at these weekly moves. So we had this long wick to the upside, and then we seriously sold off ended significantly lower on this week. So you can also see that we hit resistance right there the week prior. So I do see this 330.39 area to be a pretty strong resistance. Now on the other side of that, the support, I see support right around 316.11. So you guys can see that we have this support area right here, right here, right there. And you can kind of see that we doodled around right here. So I do believe that this area could be a stronger support. Now let's look at the next line of support if we do break below this. So I would think it's this line right here at 293.56-ish. So you can see support right there, resistance right here, doodled around right there. You can also see that it was resistance right here. We were actually just doodling around right there. And then you can see that we actually bounced off this area before we had this massive rally right there. And then also we have this 200 weekly moving average at 266.33. So that's it for Qs. Let's go ahead and move to the next ticker. Let's look at Apple. So there's a lot of stuff going on Apple, so I'm actually really simplifying this. So we are on the 1 year time frame. So the first thing I want to point out is this resistance right here. We're just connecting the tops. Now pay attention to where we actually closed. So you can see that when we broke past this, we broke past it, we faded, and then we did try to hit this intraday. So then we actually reject it right there, and who knows where this is going to go, but my thought is that we're going to continue to fall. Now that's just my thought, could be wrong. So where could we continue to fall to? Well, let's just talk about that right now. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit more. Now you guys can see this trend line. It's a very important trend line. And when I actually go on the weekly time frame, you guys can see it a little bit better. So take a look at this. So resistance right there, support right there, support right there, support, more support, support again, support. When we broke this trend line, big fall down. When we broke above it, another line up, and then we hit resistance right here. So this leads me to believe that this could act as strong support again. And then if we do break below this, well then I think we could see a pretty big sell, just like we did right here. So let's say we break below this. Well, what happens next? Well, we'll probably see a pretty big sell. How big? Do we go right here? Do we go right here? Or do we go all the way back down here? That I don't know, but let's just go ahead and talk about these support areas. So I'm going to go ahead, remove these moving averages just so you guys can see a little bit more clear. Now, what makes this first support right around 157.5? Well, I'm going to go on the 1 day time frame, which is the 1 year, and we can see that there's this gap right here. So if I point to this gap, it's right there. And if we want to fill this gap, it's right around 157.51. Now we're going to clean that up, and we're going to go right back on the weekly time frame. So we're going to zoom in a little bit. Now let's just go over the points that we're hitting right here. So we're finding support right there, huge resistance right there, support right there, support right there, resistance right there. So this 150 area is pretty significant. That could be our next line of support. Now underneath this, we could see 137.45-ish. You guys can see it's support right around this area. Bounced off right here, massive rally actually, and bounced off right there. You can see it was a resistance right around here, right around there, and right back here. So these are probably the more significant support and resistance that we do want to pay attention to. Now, let's just go ahead, introduce the moving averages again, see if there's anything we missed. Yeah, so take a look at that. The 50-day on the weekly sits right around that 157.55 area too, which is lining up perfectly with this support line. So next we're going to move on to the next ticker, which is Microsoft. Now, if I'm just looking at Microsoft on the 1-year time frame, you can see right here, very clear rejection off the 200-day moving average. And there's also this resistance trend line that we're drawing right here. It's connecting these tops. Now, you can see it actually goes through this gap right here. So it does actually come right in line with this 20-day moving average, which is sitting right at 280.65. Now, if we do want to close this gap right here, well, then we could draw the support line right there at 282.40. So that would essentially close this gap that we made right here, as you guys can see. So now let's talk about the other lines of support and resistance. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the moving averages. We're going to go on the weekly time frame. Now pay attention to this right here. So you guys can see support, 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 and then you can see that when we broke underneath this, that was the crash. When we got back above, support again, support, more support, support. Hey, what do you know? Resistance. So I was looking at this in many videos prior where I did talk about Microsoft, and this was a key level that I was paying attention to. So if we do break above this level, I do believe that we could see a pretty big rally. But if we did reject off of it and we continue to fall, I do believe that could be the next setup for a pretty big fall. So let's just zoom in a little bit. And let's just take a look at this. So the next area of support, I would say, is right around 277. So we do have this support right there. We have this resistance right there. You can kind of see that we've doodled around right around here. And then we have support right there. And the body of this candle is acting as support. And then the next area, it's all the way down here at 246.11, I would say. You guys can see that, support right there, and then right around here. So just take a look at this big chop block. So we've literally just chopped around right here between this range at 277 and 246. So this is a pretty big move right here. So if at any point we do break underneath this 277, we could come right back into this massive chop zone. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at the next ticker. It's going to be VIX. Now VIX, I like to go on the weekly. And then this gives me a really good idea of where the actual huge supports and resistances are. So when VIX does start getting closer to this area, which is all the way down here at 1440, that's going to be your sign like, hey, maybe I should definitely trim a little bit. When VIX starts getting to 37.64, that's going to be your sign like, hey, maybe I should be buying a little bit. Now there is another intermediate area right here. So that's going to be right around, let's see, right here, as you guys can see. So that's right around 2060, which is exactly where we're at. So if you see why this area is significant, support right there, support right there, support right there, right there, and where we are right now. So it's a pretty frequently tagged area. So I would say between this 1440 to 2060 is a pretty important range. Now, if we do break below this 2060 and significantly below it, then we could start entering within this chop zone of 1440 to 2060. So that would be pretty darn bullish for the markets. But as long as we stay above this 2060, well, then we see this chop zone right between 2060 and all the way up to 3764. So now let's go ahead. Let's look at the next ticker, and that is the dollar. So I do have these two trend lines going on right here. Now you can see that we're catching support, support, resistance, 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 support, and support. Now what about this trend line right here? Well, support, support, support again, support right there, and support. So now we're above all of the supports, and essentially, right now, we don't really know where this is going. Is this going to hit a double top right there, or is it going to go and make fresh highs? So that I don't really know, but right now it's looking pretty darn bullish. It's definitely weighing on equities because do remember that the dollar is actually causing big headwinds for these multinationals. It's making the foreign exchange a little bit harder for them. It's also causing a decline in revenue from foreign countries. So I hope you guys enjoyed this technical video analysis and have a great one.